Hey, friends, welcome back to yet another exciting episode of Friends of the Squared Circle. I'm your host, Crandercute, aka my real name. Today we have our co-host and friend, Richie, joining us. We want to give a huge shout out to those Facebook friends as well. We have hit 450 friends. It has been overwhelming. It has been exciting. I feel like we need to do a giveaway at 500, so stay tuned for that. Richie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, it's been a beautiful day here. We're finally getting some sun up in the northern Wisconsin area. We don't have to disclose your location where you are, but we've been dealing with snow almost halfway through April, and it's starting to warm up here. So we always talk about the weather, I guess. So.
Oh my gosh, it's like it was raining yesterday, and then next thing you know, it's like hot, and sometimes it's cold in New York. So it's like
Gotcha.
in between. So I get the feeling. So.
You guys got some crazy winters up there as well. Luckily, I have the big Lake Superior in our backyard to either hit or miss us. But this isn't a weather show. I always start out with that for some reason. But Richie, you want to dive into how you became a fan of pro wrestling?
Sure thing. I was a young kid. I used to play like Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. I used to play No Mercy and whatnot. So, and I used to play a lot. At that time, I wasn't like very knees on deep onto pro wrestling, so I was just like playing the games and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then my older brother one day, who's no longer a wrestling fan, but I still am to this day, but introduced me some pro wrestling, so I was just like, this is awesome. Like, how come this existed in video games, but this is happening in real life? So I was like, this is so awesome. Let me try follow as much as I could. So whenever I catch it, it was on. So I was happy with that.
Gotcha. Was there any characters in the video game that you liked and then you found them to be boring or liked in real life?
When I was a kid, I used to play like The Undertaker. I used to play Kane and Dwayne The Rock Johnson, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, as time went on, I was a kid. At 6 years old, I just kind of like was obsessed with like watching like Undertaker and Kane and pretty much and The Rock. So it was all cool.
Those are some definitely iconic characters there. I got to give a shout out to my sponsor here, Superior Creations. She made me an Undertaker and Stone Cold tumbler for one of our first, partnerships. For me, actually, you're probably going to think I'm a horrible wrestling fan. I wasn't big on The Rock. I wasn't big on Stone Cold, the HBKs. I like the weird ones. I know you're new to Friends of the Squared Circle here, so like Goldust, Mankind, and just the weird characters. I always felt like as a kid when it came to like picking my favorite, I had to be different. I'm not sure if you're a sports fan or not, but like my family was diehard Packer fans. So I apologize for them now. But so I had to gravitate towards something different. So when the Ravens came out, they were new, so I had to latch onto them right away. But I wasn't a huge fan of The Rock. I love his movies, don't get me wrong. Right. But wasn't a huge fan of like him as a wrestler because I like the oddities and the weird people, I guess, like Vader, and I did like Kane. Kane was pretty cool. So
I think it's a matter of like how the character is presented. Mm-hmm. Like when we're kids, we just think of like crazy like characters like Doink the Clown, who was portrayed earlier on as from Matt Bourne. And let me see, like some Bruiser Brody, Duel the Butcher. Mm-hmm. Those are a unique set of characters. We become fascinated with them, and then the athlete comes after. So I think when we're younger, we're just like fascinated, like almost like characters in a movie or a TV show. So I think that comes with it, if that has anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm. With your childhood, were you more focused on WWF because you had the video games, or did you know about WCW? That's one of those hard-hitting questions I wondered about.
Well, it was funny because I also had a WCW video game.
Okay.
For the 64, WCW versus NWO World Tour, and it's funny. I never watched their WCW product till I was probably like older.
Gotcha.
When I was more like older and started to appreciate wrestling more. So
Mhm. Yeah, I know. I was a huge WCW kid because that's what I think I saw first because of Hogan and all those guys. We always talk about like how the luchadors back then were like the marquee, talented wrestlers, and then when you had the NWO and the Hogans and those guys, it was just kind of like what everybody there was to see. But a lot of the true WCW fans preferred those cruiserweights over, the big stars then because those big star matches, the Polka Doom and Nash and Hall and them guys always winning. So
right.
I was a huge Disco Inferno fan too. So I don't know if you're a fan of him as well, but
I always enjoyed his work in the ring. So
perfect. Another disco fan, folks. I know I catch a lot of crap about that from a rival podcast, as we like to say. Jesse, he always gives me a hard time for that because it seems like everybody likes disco, Jesse. So back to you. Go ahead. Sorry.
it's really odd because I was a WWE person. So I guess one day I was alone in my room and I was watching The Rock on TV delivering a promo ring. I'm like, whoa, this is really awesome, and by myself. And he does one of these promos, and all of a sudden I just hear TV goes off. I'm like, what's going on here? It's my mother turning the TV off because she has no idea what pro wrestling was about at that point.
Gotcha.
It was one of those expletive Rock promos you could think
Oh,
of.
okay.
And I was just like, no, I want to watch the rest of it. So from that point on, no pro wrestling from there, since I was too young to know this.
Mm-hmm.
And then what fully got me into Pro Wrestling Fanatic and just learn more about the history, I guess there was a DVD or some sorts. It was
Okay.
around, and so it had the collection of all WrestleManias up to like WrestleMania 2000, pretty much. I
Okay.
was like probably 8 years old, and I decided to put it on, and I watched every WrestleMania highlights,
Mm-hmm.
and this one captivated me in particular. Was Bret Hart against Stone Cold Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13, which is probably my favorite match of all time.
Okay. Yep. That's an
Hands
iconic match. Yep.
It's still one of my favorites. And if you read the backstories to the matches and the stories about how the match was presented, it's still incredible. And I still love to learn more about it. So,
Yeah, to think too, Bret Hart, Ben McCoy kind of mentioned it, and I kind of think about it a little bit, is that Bret Hart basically, was Stone Cold's coming out party. That match put him another level. And then, obviously the Vince McMahon stuff during that Attitude Era was, pretty iconic to everybody. That was what they remember. But, Bret basically was the foundation for Stone Cold for that next level. And I'm probably going to catch a lot of crap for that. But, Bret did, make Stone Cold a star. So
I think at that time frame, Austin was just hot as heels. It was the 1997 was probably one of the best years in pro wrestling. It had ECW in its first pay-per-view. It had Sting against the NWO and WCW, and had the cruiserweights. And you had WWE aligning. You had it was setting up the year that was breaking pretty much for business. You had The Rock becoming himself. You had Steve Austin on the rise, and you had the slow build of the evil Mr. McMahon and the anti-establishment coming in, and the stars aligning together. So it was a very important year in the wrestling world. So
yeah, DX, that was one of the groups you mentioned, as well as NWO. I always liked NWO more, but that kind of got really bad after a while. Was there any favorites in that time period that stick out? I know you mentioned you liked The Undertaker and Kane and them in the video games, but had your taste or I guess favorites kind of changed at that point?
Yes, like lots of favorites like changed up like over the years. I think when I was like a teen, I always enjoyed Chris Jericho. I always
Okay.
enjoyed Kurt Angle. I've always enjoyed Eddie. I always
Oh,
enjoyed a lot of Brian Danielson's pretty much. So I got to learn more because it's an amazing like you get to learn a lot more about wrestlers at certain backgrounds and who they're trained by pretty much, and you get some certain of education in the business. So like how they train and like for example, like you learn about the heart children learning and most people don't know this that before Brett was going to be trained in pro wrestling, he was a film student at a film school. He was going to
okay.
go there, and then he got an offer from Stu Hart, not Stu Hart, excuse me, Vergagne, to come train down there. So he got a job and to save up money to go to at the AWA territory to learn from Vern. Then he went to train in Japan
Okay.
and to
Yep.
learn more about the realistic. So you could imagine if Brett went to Vern Gagne pretty much instead of going to Japan, then eventually going to Stu Hart's learn in the dungeon pretty much. So that's kind of like pro wrestling history I always enjoyed.
Yeah, and just that, lately we've been talking a lot about the Hearts, but I mean Owen, and then Davey Boy Smith being a part of that family, mirroring it, of course, as well as Jim the Anvil Neihart. That's one thing I remember a lot from that Attitude Era was the Team Canada, and I always think like, why were we so mad at Canada back then? When we were in a war with Iraq at that time, and it's just like, why do we hate Canada so much? But as that heel stable, they were pretty good. Yep. So.
I've always enjoyed a lot of stuff from like Owen and Davey Boy, and then Brian Pillman, of course, because
Oh yeah.
since he was
Yep.
former since tough as nails, he's been battling adversity since he was a guy, since he was a baby. He had like almost 30 plus throat surgeries. He had a
Okay.
throat cancer. He was deemed too small by the NFL since he was a former Cincinnati Bengal. Then he went to play for the CFL of the Edmonton Eskimos, and then he trained as a pro wrestler. So Pillman was just been a badass from the very beginning, pretty much.
Yeah, I definitely do forget about Brian Pillman. I guess he didn't stand out that much to me, but I know in WCW he was with Austin, so it only and that's another thing that pops out now that I'm bringing it up is when he did that breaking into Pillman's house, like that was
It was groundbreaking at that point.
that
So
was definitely something that got a lot of media attention for the way that was filmed, and I remember watching, like going home, like, oh my gosh, what happened? What happened? Because I was at my grandparents probably that night, because I didn't watch wrestling at home because I don't think we had cable, but yeah, it was crazy.
I could imagine. So it was like, but I didn't learn about it as much as I till I was older, and then but you could imagine just like knowing how crazy Brian Pillman was, like in real life, being so dedicated to his character, the loose
Mhm.
cannon gimmick. And then next thing you know, you find out he has a gun on
Mhm.
live TV. You're just going, oh no, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, yeah. And then that makes me think of Austin when he had the fake gun when he made Vince McMahon piss his pants. So yeah.
Yeah,
But
how funny is that?
I mean, some of that stuff obviously would not fly today, with the guidelines and the network saying you cannot put that on TV, but wild. And I think we watched that as kids thinking, oh my gosh, this is real life right now happening for us. So,
Yeah, because we're just being captivated by it,
mhm.
and at next thing you know, we're yeah, and we find out later on, it's like, oh, it's all for
Mhm.
it's theatrical, but
Yep.
it's still entertaining.
Yep. I know we get chastised about the fake word a lot, but I love it. It's brought a great community together. It's brought you and I together to build this
Yeah,
friendship, pun intended, for the thing here as well. But
Absolutely.
yeah, wrestling is definitely gone from, I always call it the glam era with the women's wrestling, to the bathroom break, to like now wrestling, the women's wrestling is right up there with the men's, and same with the men's. It's progressed to even a higher level. The high flyers are flying higher, and the technical wrestlers are more technical, and then you got Brock Lesnar coming in there just not giving an F and just beating everybody up. It's so crazy. Wrestling is alive and well, definitely now. So
Yeah. Well, I think pro wrestling's more expanded than ever. I
mhm.
mean, it's never going to be the same like in the 90s, but however, more people are like tuning into it. You
Yeah.
know, I think it's just the internet's out, so you get to watch independent work and you get to watch like Japan. We get to watch Mexico, we get to watch England with Progress
Mhm.
and whatever's going on in Canada. But I think this is probably more people have watched than ever. So, in my view, so
Yeah, and then you also like, you bring up Premiere. Shout out to Frontline Ben, who we had on a previous episode here. Their stuff's on there, like you said, and Fight TV. Um, you know, Kids have it so lucky today to have everything at their fingertips, for social media, to follow their favorite wrestlers, as well as to find content. I mean, I remember standing in a Kmart, reading through, well, not probably reading it, just flipping through the magazines and discovering people that way. That was the way that I found out about people, and just was like, oh, number one is Raven in this category. I was like, well, now I got to be a Raven fan. Or I, I get a lot of crap for this too. I was an Ahmed Johnson fan because he just was so big and muscular when he came out, and then to hear how like horrible of a human being he was backstage, and it's just like, oh, and then talking to Ron Simmons and Devon, or not Devon, um, why am I forgetting his name?
Mark Henry.
Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. There we go. It started with a D. Hearing those guys say like things about him was like, oh, well, I'm glad I didn't stick with that guy as a favorite wrestler, because when Farouk came out and beat up Ahmed Johnson, I was like, well, he can beat up my favorite wrestler, so now Farouk's my favorite wrestler. So
Right. I think the behind the scenes stuff is sometimes could be more interesting than the
mhm.
stuff that's in the ring, or just as interesting.
Yeah, and you can see behind me, I got a lot of books, and those are like 90% biographies of the wrestlers, and it's quite crazy to hear the things that you hear, or you know, they're in bad habits, I should say. It's just like, wow, and he was out there performing night after night while being high as a kite. It's unbelievable, because you don't notice those things till you read about them. So,
Right. I've
uh,
always I've
but
always enjoyed that.
yeah, kayfabe has definitely been kind of broken with the internet. Like you see Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair beating the crap out of each other, and then
Mhm.
that night on social media they got a picture where they're out to dinner at some fancy restaurant. But it's crazy to be what's what am I looking for here? More invested in their lives, because they're constantly on social media as well. You find out what they like and don't like. I would have never thought that Baron Corbin was into smoking meat and grilling and cooking till I found his TikTok, and that's all he does on there now. Or Superior's own Otis. He's a grill connoisseur. He's out there always cooking steaks and brats and shrimp and all that stuff. It's crazy to see how they are as a person versus Corbin being the big money guy or the lone wolf or something like that. So
It's
you get
it's
that.
really funny when you get to learn more
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And because I remember like I have like this is like my horror movie cover, like by the way.
Okay.
So I meet wrestlers almost all the time. And whenever wrestlers ask about it, like for instance, like I meet Brian Kendrick at a convention somewhere in New York, and it's not too
Mhm.
far from me. Like he just saw it and he was like, "Oh, can I identify them?" I was like, "Absolutely!" Like he was just he loved horror movies. So, and I could
Mhm.
imagine like he tried to list every single one. I was just like, this is perfect. You know, you just get to interact with them and like
Mhm.
discover their one. You're not just talking to like the person you saw on TV. You're just talking to like Brian Kendrick, the human being, pretty much. And I think
Yeah.
it's the coolest thing. You just get to interact and bond with them over one common thing. So
Yeah, Alexa Bliss, like I would have never took her for a horror fan, like at all. And she's all like, I like Freddy, I like Chucky, and it's just like, okay, never would have thought that. So
yeah, you just got to go with the mindset. Like wrestlers are just people too, and as time goes on, it's like it's very awesome to actually get to know them. So
Mhm. And to have those conversations versus, I got to make fun of my buddy Joe when he met Paul Ellering, the manager for the Road Warriors. The first thing that came out of his mouth was, "My son likes to beat up your tag team on WWE," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, dude, fanboying out here." But yeah, and I talked to Honky Tonk Man. They say that it's like they always get the same questions over and over, like, "What was your favorite match?" Or "What was your what was it like working with Hogan?" And they're just like, "Oh, this question again." So I always try to just come out of the box and be like, "What do you think of our great city? It's pretty cold today," or "How long did you have to drive?" Stuff like that to kind of break the ice versus going in with those standard three questions. So.
cliched like questions. Like for instance, I met Marty Skrull like somewhere in Jersey, and like the
Mhm.
first thing I brought up is Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because he was doing it for a while,
Okay,
and I do it too. I'm a blue belt, so that's another reason why pro wrestling's got me into martial arts. So
gotcha. Okay.
another twisted world I live in. So and so him and I just bond. We talked for like 15, 20 minutes, and it was cool. Like you get to learn more stuff as time goes on. Like you get to learn like all sorts of people, like, and it's really awesome. I've met over like maybe almost 70 wrestlers. It's really insane. Like most of the time you just say hello, how are
Mhm.
you, pretty much, and blah blah blah. But but some of the interactions are really cool as hell. You could imagine what it's like.
Yeah, my buddy Bob actually got to wash worms for the Boogeyman. So I mean, that's kind of a crazy story that now once his kids are getting a little older, they're starting to get into their preteens that he can be like, "Hey, see that guy on TV? Well, your dad washed worms in the sink for that man at a show because Bob disappeared." And I was like, "Where the hell were you?" And he's like, "I was washing the Boogeyman's inchworms." I'm like, "Are you freaking serious?" "Yeah, man." I was like, how does that happen at a wrestling show? But hey, Bob's got the memories. So,
Right.
do you have any crazy stories of when you met some wrestlers? Now that you mentioned that you met about 70 of them.
Oh, well, I think some of my favorites were like meeting Ricky Starks and like very nice dude. He's a big autism awareness advocate, and so am I to a degree because I have the disability and whatnot, and I suffer from like seizures and whatnot. So I'm there
Okay.
just like to educate people on it, and it's awesome that he like helps out like people with t- disabilities too. So it's just another thing,
Hmm.
and another thing was just like I was terrified like to be Haku, for a
Yep.
guy like in his
Same.
50s, and I was
Yep.
just like, okay, please don't say anything dumb. Then you realize Haku's just a normal human being. He's like the nicest dude in the world.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I know when I met Gold Dust, Dustin Rhodes, I probably said I was nervous 9 times. And he's just like, "You want a picture?" "Yeah, yeah, I'm just really nervous." "Do you want me to sign your book?" "Yeah, yeah, I'm just really nervous." "Okay." So then when I finally met him the second time, I realized, well, I have my nephew with who's not really going to talk much, so I have to be the one talking. So I'm psyching myself up in this moment. And I was telling him that story, and then he says to me, "Are you nervous?" And then I instantly just got all clammy, nervous, and I was just like, "No, no, no, let's get the picture quick. I'll have to send you that picture." But yeah, and then my friends were making fun of me when I met Cody and were trying to like psych me out because they wanted to see me clam up in front of Cody. I handled myself pretty well, so I'm proud of that. But I got my buddy back when we met Alexa Bliss because he was super nervous. I went through, got my picture, talked to her like I'd known her 1,000 years. And I was like, oh, by the way, my buddy's coming through the curtain next. He's really nervous. And the first thing she said to him was, oh, are you the nervous guy? So he was pretty pissed at me that day. So, but hey, payback's a bitch, right? So,
Exactly. Well, the first time I met a pro wrestler, it was Mick Foley. So,
okay.
and I was absolutely terrified. Like, I was just like, I didn't know what to think. I was just in the zone. And I think it was for the 20-year Hell in a Cell tour. So he was doing stand up that day.
Nice.
So I got to meet Mick, and it was the coolest thing ever. So he was talking about the Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker, and he goes, and I went up to Mick. He says, you know, Mick, you're in one of my favorite matches of all time. He goes, what is it, the Hell in a Cell match? And he goes, no, your match against Shawn Michaels from Mind Games '96. And he just kind of got blown away by it. I was like, whoa, you serious? I was like, yeah, it's one of my favorite matches of all time. And he goes, well, it's too bad I don't make a good tour out of this match, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he told us because this was like his like couple years doing the tour. He's like, before anybody asks, yes, it hurt. Are we going to talk about it? A little bit, yes, but I don't want to talk about it after, you know, because I'm sure he gets it a million times, you know.
He probably gets that a lot, so.
Mm-hmm. And then I always like when my friends come, they always seem to have a really hard time. My buddy's gotten, you know, yelled at by Mick Foley. Other friend got yelled at by Bruce the Beefcake. You know, I haven't had any issues with any wrestlers except for Honky Tonk Man. He seemed a little smug to some kid in front of me, but that wasn't towards me, so I don't really know what exactly happened. But I got to talk to him in Chicago and Minnesota again, and he's kind of won me over with just being nice. But yeah, they say don't meet your heroes sometimes, but you know, you gotta risk it. You know, you gotta get out there and chase it. So
you just gotta be more like human as you could think.
mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
They're just like behind like their persona. It's just like, for instance, like you see Razor Ramon on TV, but you're also seeing Scott Hall on like backstage, you know?
Yeah.
He's like the guy on TV, you think he's having a glamorous life, but the guy behind it is not, you know, because there's always some people going through something.
Yep. And you know, I touched on reading those biographies, and you know, and that's one thing that I mentioned on the previous podcast is how like I was upset about Taker saying that the boys and girls now are soft because they're not out, you know, mixing it up or drinking. They're too busy playing video games. And it's just like, well, you know, video games aren't hurting nobody. You know, he doesn't have to go to a bar and be pressured to drink, you know, and that's one thing that kind of irritated me with that because I'm sick of hearing about my heroes struggling, you know, finding out that my heroes are dying because of that. You know, like it's sad to say, but it's just like, oh man, the things they go through just to entertain us is crazy, you know.
Oh yeah, especially going on the road, like going to different cities, and it's just like it's just a crazy world that, you know, they actually have to endure. So it's like you're going out, like you don't see your family, you don't see your friends, you just go out, do a match or two, go on a show, and if you need to get like coked up, you probably need to go to a bar somewhere, or like, and it's I compare it as a circus, you know, you're just out there in the road, and you just the stuff you see on the road, you just need to get entertained by it. So
and it's crazy the stuff we read that they encounter on the road too, you know, like, you know, a lot of people didn't know about Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you know, when he had that serious car accident, his girl got killed, you know, or, you know, him and the Iron Sheik, obviously everybody found about that, you know, with their escapades in the car. But like, it's, you know, it's crazy how much they put on the line just for us. And, you know, it's a whole nother, you know, black hole to go down. So when you do meet these wrestlers, is there a specific thing that you get signed? Do you just get pictures? I mean, for me, usually I get the autograph for someone else, unless it's somebody that I'm really a big fan of. But I'm more of a picture guy, and then I usually get my book signed. Those are the two things that I like to do: is picture or get my book signed.
I'm more of a picture guy, honestly,
Okay.
because I just like one day I just like to make a good scrapbook of like wrestlers I met. I'm like, you get to reflect on stuff like that. Like almost a year ago, I met like the Briscoes, both Mark and Jay.
Very
And
nice.
and it's so funny because I met them in January 2022, 2023, almost a year later. Jay was killed in a car accident. And all I can remember is looking at this photo. I'm like, oh gosh, man, this is just like, it's creepy. It's haunting, you know?
Yep. And and it's an easy break book for sure. Like I was gonna have a segment, another show. We haven't done it. I don't think we're going to, but it was going to be, Friends of the Squared Circle Showcase, where you would bring on your pictures and then kind of explain like those encounters, like how was it, and then rate it on a scale 1 to whatever, just so you could be out there bragging. But I know I have like a certain album right on my phone. It says celebrities, because it's not just all wrestling. Like I got football players and some actors and stuff in there. But it's always fun to be like, oh, Batista, like let me show you this picture of Batista and I, or who else? The kid from Rookie of the Year was a movie that I used to watch all the time. As a kid.
Nicholas.
Yep. So it was so cool, just to show those pictures off, and that's kind of what the collectible show was that we talked about off camera. Is that people love showing off what they got, and I've mentioned it 3 or 4 times now. My books, like those are my pride and joys, as long as my Otis collection back there too. So
it's funny because like I meet these wrestlers and take photos, and I get to share them. I'm like, dude, I'm so jealous you get to meet them. I'm like, nah, man, I just like doing it. I just enjoy it. So, and I only got a few things signed. One, I had like Autism Awareness shoes, and 2 people signed it. It was Claudio Castagnoli and Ricky Starks. So it was really cool to see. So
very nice.
Yeah. And so I hope to meet more. So I made a big list of them, but who knows if I'll get it done. But
there's always going to be more to add to that list if you can't complete it. You know what I mean? So, is there anybody that you're chomping at the bit to meet? One of my big fish right now would be Daniel Bryan and The Big Show. Those are 2 guys that I always liked as a kid. So, and
Bryan Danielson's a really good dude. He's just like very, very friendly with fans. So, and
go ahead. Sorry.
I would like to be like FTR.
Okay.
Mercedes Vernado and or Mercedes Moné, depending who you talk to. Let me see. Sting and like Undertaker, obviously, is top of the list, but I got to beat Brett, thankfully. So
you'll definitely have to go to Texas. It seems like Taker's always doing that Fitman group down there. Every time I turn around, him or Flair is doing another signing. So
I got to be Flair, thankfully. So,
so I don't know if you saw in a previous episode. I got to meet him with my best friend Chris. Yep, Chris. I'm using the B word in front of your name. Best friend Chris. Give him a hard time for that. He was a huge Flair fan. He was coming to La Crosse, Wisconsin here, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go. Chris was kind of juggling if he could go or not, and I was like, you know what? You're my +1. You're going, because you got to have, I think, at least 4 people in the photo with you. So I was like, you're coming with me. You're going to meet Ric Flair. And I always loved Gilbert Brown as a kid, back to the Packer thing with my family. And we went through. Chris got to talk to him. I got the autograph on my book. He signed the cover, which I'm kind of upset about. Well, whatever. That's not the news. And then as we're getting in line for the picture, I see Gilbert Brown, who, like I said, is one of my favorites as a kid, standing up there with Ric Flair. Ric Flair did not exist at this point for me. And I was like, oh my God, we get to meet Gilbert Brown too? And everybody's like, yeah, Gilbert Brown. I'd already met Flair at this point. So like, this was my second time meeting him. I walk up on stage. I'm like, hello, Mr. Flair. Thanks again for coming. Oh my gosh, Gilbert. I gave him like this partial hug and was like, I used to do the Gravedigger when I was a kid. My football coach yelled at me for that, man. This is like the best day ever. I get to meet Gilbert Brown. And Flair standing right next to him. So I
That must
fangirled
be.
out hard for Gilbert Brown because I had tried to meet him like 3 or 4 times throughout Wisconsin and just never lined up, and I was so bummed. And that day was Chris's best life for meeting Ric Flair. That day was my best life, meeting Gilbert Brown. But now I'm married, Randy. Take a shot. So yeah,
Marriage.
yeah,
That's and it's funny because I was supposed to beat Jay Lethal 3 or 4 times,
gotcha.
and I was supposed to do a Macho Man Randy Savage off because it's a funny story
Yep.
behind that. So I guess I do a decent Macho Man, and I want a Macho Man off at a bar somewhere just for wrestling trivia,
That's awesome.
and all I wanted was a skateboard. I was like, okay, if I have to be the real Ultimate guy, I have to beat Jay Lethal at it.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he's advertised, he's never either got canceled or had some travel related issue, and he
Gotcha.
couldn't make it. So I'm like, son of a bee stings.
Yeah,
I can't.
you'll get
I was
that.
like,
You'll get that moment. I used to have a site that told me, where they were going all the time, but they stopped doing it now. It's like, what the heck? But it's what I get for being a snoop, I guess. So is there anything else you want to cover? Like I said off camera, we like to keep these kind of short. The floor is yours. Anything else you want to throw out? And then once we get a little closer towards the end, we'll get all that social stuff from you as well. So
yeah. So yeah, I have a Substack account. So and it's yeah, forgive me because it's like people are just like so in tune to it, like
mm-hmm.
because I just made it recently and I'm still trying to figure out this thing. So
And we can always put those links in the comments for you too when we post the video.
absolutely.
So no pressure there. I just want people to have the opportunity. As you've seen on Wednesdays, we like to show off our friends, so you guys can reach your goals as well. Because I'll say it here on an episode. I know I've made a post about it that it's okay to like other wrestling pages. It's okay to like other pages when you own a page. It's okay to share other pages. They're not taking away from your value. Because I know some people are like, oh, well, if I get them to like me, I don't need to like them back. I got what I want. No. I want to like your stuff. You got to like my stuff. Let's build this huge empire of just wrestling fandom and help everybody reach their goals. So don't be afraid to like another page or support other pages if you're running a page. That's my 2-second rant there. So but yeah, we'll definitely put those in the comments when we post them for you. What's that?
Yeah, so I'm just putting some products in. So
okay,
I'm just putting some products in. So like I made some clothing for pro wrestling and autism awareness.
Okay.
I have a Substack page. If anyone wants to check out writing, I have like 2 Instagrams if anyone wants to follow me. So I'll just try
give them a like and
post it
follow,
on
peeps.
below. So
Perfect. And I'll try to save those here and then get those up. So
sure, I will do that. So yeah, it's funny because yeah, when you have a huge following, it's like everyone wants to know who you are. So it's funny.
Yeah, I think I found you through pictures on another page. Yeah, so
you can imagine where this all leads to. So
mm-hmm.
and I always learn this from my mentors or whatever. Success comes at a price.
Mm-hmm.
And as do you want to like talk to various people? You know what I mean? And it's still funny, just you still have people you want to talk to, and I still find it funny to this day,
Makes me think of the $1 Million Man there. Go ahead, sorry.
You're fine. When I learn about when people want to talk to you and stuff like that, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is really happening right now. Yeah, and I've been featured on podcasts.
Yep. So
I've been featured on podcasts and everything. It's insane,
You're blowing up. You're over, as the kids say.
Oh, gosh, man. I'm still a kid at heart to some degree.
Yeah, I still have action
And
figures.
oh yeah, pop figures are always like that too. So
We'll have to get you on an episode of
and
Show Me the Collectibles too. So
right, exactly. I always enjoyed it. Like, but what I always enjoy is this is related to pro wrestling. I always enjoyed like it's an escape. I've been through everything you could think
Mhm.
of. I've I've had health issues. I struggle with mental stuff, and I've been through everything you could think of. And I always learned that pro wrestling is an escape, for everybody.
Mhm.
And I've always enjoyed that. And I'm thankful that I found the sport because without pro wrestling, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for pro wrestling, I wouldn't do martial arts.
Mhm.
If it wasn't for pro wrestling, I wouldn't do being greets or be on this podcast. I
Mhm.
considered pro wrestling as an art or as a sport. So it's a wonderful masterpiece of art. So that's why I always love to say about pro wrestling. I just enjoy it for what it is. Whether you disagree or agree with the opinions of fans or not, at the end of the day, it brings everyone together. So that's
Does
what I
yep.
love about it.
And
So
I know I say it here all the time. Like, you know, this is how I met a lot of my close friends. Is just through wrestling, and now
mhm,
I'm expanding that with these episodes as well as our friendship now. That's going to continue. More episodes, possibly Show Me the Collectibles if we can get to that. But wrestling, like you said, brings people together. So
and I'm meeting Jim Ross at June 4th, and so
I'm
it'll be
so jealous.
yeah, yeah. So I just try to enjoy it as much as I can. So
Very nice. Yeah, I know I got to get his book. I got it somewhere around here, but that's on my list to get signed because he's got a biography. So, but
right,
all
it's
righty. Well, go ahead. All right.
it's still amazing. So yeah. So all these links I got a Substack. If anyone wants to join
Perfect.
mine, I have 2 Instagram accounts, and I have a store for anyone who wants to buy pro wrestling
Perfect.
autism awareness stuff. So if anyone's interested, so I just
Perfect.
posted on the chat. So
All righty. Sounds good. All right, Richie. I appreciate you for being a friend of the Squared Circle, agreeing to come on. I know you're very new. Well, not as new to the page, but we finally got this linked up. We'll get you to the back to the lounge. I always tell people just hang out for me, don't leave. We had a guy leave one time. But we'll play that beautiful video package and then we'll chat off camera.
all right, sounds good.
All right. Appreciate it, Richie. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, friends. That is another episode of Friends of the Squared Circle where I'm your host, Crander Q, a.k.a. my real name. As you know, we didn't really talk about Randy much today, but we got to give him the plug. Yes, we got to give him the plug. Most views, blah, 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 blah. Somebody beat this record, please. All right. Thanks, friends, for coming into another episode here. We appreciate you as well as, yes, we are at 450 plus friends. And, every time we get a new follow, we just get excited.
Oh, boy! Yes!
So make sure you tell our friends and your friends about our podcast. It's your boy, Crander Q. Crander Q out. Hey, friends, thanks for tuning in to yet another exciting episode of Friends of the Squared Circle, where I'm your host, Crander Q, a.k.a. my real name. Now let's jump into the sponsors, shall we? Make sure to check out ChefKeithFoods.com for all of your salsa needs. The best made fresh since 2019. Flavors include Ragin' Reaper, Hoppin' Habanero, Groovy Garden, and more. Check out that website today. Also, check out our friends over at Superior Creations for all of your custom tumbler needs. They are on Facebook.com/Superior Creations MN. Also, Darren Corbin, give him a like on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Yes, Darren Corbin is on TikTok. And another great way to support Darren is by checking out patreon.com/Darren Corbin, where tiers start at just $1. Last but not least, make sure you give us a like and follow on all of our social medias as well. We want to thank you for being a friend of the Squared Circle. Tune in for more episodes. Also, if you want to get merch for yourself, you can check out friendsofthesquaredcircle.org for all of those needs. And it's your boy, Crander Q. Crander Q out.